I was still watching My Little Pony, and I was like, this blew my mind. Like, maybe if I hadn't been shown The Crow at age 11, I would be normal. This video was filmed in July of 2024, but I'm recutting it into a shorter, more digestible version for all of you to enjoy. For the full version, check the link in the description below. Thanks! Hi y'all, SnarkyJay Cosplay here. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a long time. If you've spent any time watching this channel at all, you probably know that my biggest love, my favorite movie of all time, is The Crow from 1994. And I was recently given a gift, genuinely the greatest piece of content I've ever read in regards to The Crow. It's called The Crow, The Life, Death, and Rebirth of a Classic Film, and I have the great pleasure today of having on the author of this book, none other than BRIDGET BAISS. So BRIDGET, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So I have been obsessed with The Crow since I was 11 years old. It has been my greatest passion. So coming from a Crow fanatic, what is it that inspired you to write this book?
A friend of mine, a friend of a friend, was having dinner with us at this restaurant in Los Angeles and said, hey, you know, I publish a lot of like calendars and merch and stuff to do with The Crow. And I had seen the movie because I went to UCLA film school. So I had seen it when I was in film school, and then I was very impressed. But I knew some people who had worked on it, but I didn't give it that much of a thought. And the publisher who I was having dinner with said, if you can find a story in it, I will publish it. And I said, okay. So in 94, obviously the movie came out, but the accident, obviously, that killed Brandon Lee happened in 93. There was a criminal investigation, and that ended fairly quickly within a year or two. But then there was civil litigation that happened. So, and people who worked on the film had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and they and be silent. By 1999, everything had expired. So I came along, and one person after another I convinced, I'm like, really, I do not want to write a sensational book. I want to write a really good book about your story, about what happened on the movie. But there's so much interest in The Crow, and just sort of, I've gone on to do many other things in my life, and people keep calling me. Now I'm kind of like, I'm the only person who put the entire story into a chronicle. I knew the 30th anniversary was coming up, so I called a lot of the people who I interviewed in the first one, like, why is The Crow a phenomenon still? Why do new generations of fans care? Why are they making a new reimagining of the film?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because it's an evergreen story.
In the book, because you literally encapsulate everything that happened, from James O'Barr writing it, the production, you talk about the soundtrack, like every little thing, every little detail. Do you think that that's part of preserving both the film's legacy as filmmaking has changed and Brandon Lee's legacy?
The question that lots of people ask is like chicken and egg. Like, was the movie successful because of the tragedy and then the kind of lore around that in 1994, or was it because it stands on its own? And I would argue it stands on its own. This movie was the first of its kind. I wanted to write something that would last the test of time, and that would really be a chronicle of the movie itself, not just about sensational things. And I really wanted to tell how we got, and it was such a compelling story. People would talk to me, they're like, oh, we've never talked to anybody in this length. I'm like, I want to know your whole story.
It's really tempting for journalists and for media in talking about this to just make it about the tragedy. The Crow is such a groundbreaking for its time. Was it hard to get, comments from folks?
Well, at the start, I had to gain people's trust.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of figure out relationships I had, because I had I was in LA and in film and television production. So I kind of used a little leverage from people I knew, but it just really was calling people and being very honest. But there was a lot of skepticism from a lot of people too. But I did get a couple of pretty threatening phone calls from people saying you should not write this book, but that disappeared pretty quickly. And so the more people who I befriended, they're like, oh, we should talk to this person, and oh, you should talk to that person. It took a while, but I somehow got the book done in a year. So I pretty much dedicated myself to doing it. And there's some new anecdotes in the new edition of people who had been hesitant to speak, because I think people wanted to distance themselves. People are frightened about how it might badly reflect on their careers and their futures. Although not true with many of the people who spoke to me very late. Claudia Claudio Miranda, the gaffer, has gone on to win an Oscar. Chad Stahelski, who was
oh my God, yes.
I mean, Chad
yeah,
Stahelski
the
was
director of John
Brandon's
Wick.
body double and friend from the dojo they went to. And then they trusted me with like talking about Brandon which I was deeply, deeply honored by. So I do have a question for you. So what was it when you were 11 that you were struck by that film?
The only reason I watched it, my mom loves showing me old, irrelevant movies. We were digging in a $5 bin at Best Buy, and she pulls out The Crow, and she goes, "You love superhero crap. You would love this." And she sat me down to watch it, and I think what really strikes me about it, I think it really just resonated with me as one of the greatest love stories ever told. You can look at it like a vengeance mission, but it's all derived from this love between this man and this woman who were wrongly separated by death. I was 11 years old, had no concept of love or what a relationship should look like. I was still watching My Little Pony, and I was like, this blew my mind. Like, maybe if I hadn't been shown The Crow at age 11, I would be normal. And I think it prepared me, like just that single line.
It can't rain all the time.
That is my motto, my creed. I live by that. Life throws all kinds of challenges at you. It's not a bed of roses for any of us. And it was the way he delivered it where it felt like this was not an actor reading a line. This was somebody who believed this. And I think that a lot of people feel the same way.
It has an evergreen kind of story about compassion and love and the human spirit and all those things that sound really stupid and cliche, but they're not, because the way that the show executes it is not 100% right. It's like the character's not a good guy. It's not about being good or bad. It's about being human and the humanity that, yes, I agree. I mean, that's the magic of Brandon Lee's portrayal of it. It's just the nuance and I think everyone would feel like there was so much depth to what he brought to that.
Yeah. Would you say then that that's what sets The Crow apart? Because it's obvious that, you know, the comic book movie basically became commonplace. I think you can't throw a rock in a movie theater without hitting a poster for 6 new Marvel and DC movies at any given time. And yet I don't think there's a single piece of media that ever affected me or that I ever connected with to that extent. Would you say that it's the fact that it's such a human story, that human quality in the film and in his portrayal?
I think the whole story permeates with all the characters kind of feed into that. And I think that that's what the producers also wanted in the creative team is they wanted to create a really human story. You know, Ernie Hudson's character is the police officer. I mean, he has his own, you learn about his trials, you learn about him. Sarah, the character's story, I mean, her mom is a heroin addict, and even the bad guys, to a certain extent, have some frailty. There was just this level of, and it's to a credit to the producers and Alex Proyas for showing that. It's hard to contrast it with like Marvel or DC movie. It's really hard.
It's apples to oranges, to be honest.
It is kind of, because it's a totally different movie. It is stylized in its own way, and I don't know what really would be similar to it. But I think that you know, they tried to really portray, even in this fake reality where they live and this hellhole that they created, the individual people have meaning, and it was just magic, right?
Yeah, I think that that's lost in filmmaking, but that's an entirely different subject. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting about the book, though, there's that concept that people have had almost that surrounds Shakespeare's Macbeth being a cursed play. A lot of people, for whatever reason, felt that The Crow was a cursed film. And without even going into the tragedy of obviously what happened to Brandon Lee, somebody had caught fire on the set, a crew member. There was a hurricane that destroyed a big part of the set and delayed production. Some sort of flood damaged film for the movie once it was finished. And for this reason, people still believe that there is some sort of curse surrounding The Crow as a project. What do you think about that?
There's a lot of stuff that happened that was pretty hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Although the natural disaster, I mean, the guy getting electrocuted, and all of them were totally explainable. It was just the backlot they hadn't used for a while. There were power lines. It was carelessness. It was also that there wasn't a lot of safety protocols. And so that's explainable totally. So, I mean, everything is explainable, and I tried to explain it. I mean, Brandon's death was, I mean, one in I don't even want to say million, billion, I don't know, chance that all these components of what happened would have aligned. I'm not a superstitious person, but the chances are very slim that this would have happened. Extremely. Because there were many, many mistakes, many, many oversights that culminated in this terrible, and then the actual like physics of what happened were just so unlikely. People, things sometimes have trails of bad luck. History is full of it, right? Maybe there is something more that I don't understand, but it does still give me pause.
When it comes to said tragedy, I had read a lot of different articles, and I was like, somebody wrote this who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And when I read the book, I finally walked away with not just an understanding of the incident. You included first-hand accounts. I think a year or two later now, after the incident on the set of Rust, do you think it's important in conversations about The Crow to continue to talk about that incident? Do you think it'll ever have an impact on gun safety?
I spent a lot more time than I ended up including in the book because I didn't want to take away from the purpose of the book, which was to write about the making of the movie The Crow and its lasting impact as a cultural classic. And I've talked a lot about, I've done interviews with various publications about the safety on sets. Basically, sets are very safe. They're generally very, very safe, considering all the rounds of, blanks that are fired, all the explosions that happen on movie sets. So the only similar accident for 30 years that happened, almost 30 years, was a fatality on set of a major person was The Crow, and then it was Rust. So that's a pretty good record overall. Crew members have accidents that are not recorded. So those don't make it to the media because they're not tied to a celebrity that we can get. So that's the media's fault. But so safety, though, generally, compared to all the rounds of ammo and explosions that happen and all the production that happens, is really, really good, generally. And typically, when you're in a low budget situation and you're outside a major film production area. So if you're in North Carolina, in Wilmington, North Carolina, or if you're in the desert with this really low budget film that they were making. I mean, the Crow in 1993 was 25 million. Rust was like 11 million 2 years ago. So I cutting corners and so many safety people I spoke to, and I did include that all kind of in the last, afterward, the guidelines for handling firearms on any movie are the same as they were in 1993. If you follow them, you're totally safe. If you cut corners, which is one of the first things they told me that gets cut corners, producers are going along and they're like, we're going to be fine. We don't need the safety thing or whatever, we got to do the makeup and hair because that's what people are going to see. The chances of anything bad happening are small. But when they do happen, they're a big deal. I think that the awareness has gotten a lot better now, but I think technology is also creating a safer environment.
We could sit here and talk about that tragedy all day long, but I think one of the great things, and we kind of touched upon it earlier, was how special Brandon Lee as an individual was. Would you say there's a common thread in conversations about him and his life, like something that you think stood out about him as a person?
So many people who worked with him and knew him who decided to be honest with me and tell me. It was consistent. He was a genuinely kind, creative, gifted person. Not only an actor, but he took a great part in writing the script. He was fun and a prankster, but just people loved him. Their love for him just came through. And not like, oh, well, we loved him. It was genuinely, he resonated. He had his trials in his life beforehand, with his father's death and just living different places. And I just was struck by so many people told me similar. All these people feel the same way about him in a way that was really warm and obviously sad, but talked the same way about. He was just this really talented, kind, intelligent, creative spirit who people loved being around. They trusted him. They liked him. There was never anyone who said anything. And I don't think it's because of the trend. Nobody ever said anything negative. And I don't think it's because they were holding back because in homage to whatever. I think it's because it was genuinely true. So it was a loss that person is no longer with us on Earth.
I think that is a really important part of the book, is that, conversations surrounding him are so often sensationalized and they want to focus on this tragedy, but I think his life, anybody's life, is worth so much more than their final moments. So I think that was a great thing to include in the book. So I think it's safe to say, in the earlier parts of the book, when they were thinking of casting Eric Draven, early on, they mentioned names like Johnny Depp, Christian Slater, River Phoenix. I think we're probably in agreement that The Crow might not have had the same impact had Brandon Lee not been the star.
It would have been all different. And the reason that they considered those actors before Brandon, they were known names to the public. So that's why they considered them initially. And in some cases they were busy, or they didn't want to pay, or they asked to, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. And it just was, inevitably they took a gamble on giving Brandon the role, but it was clear to all of them that this is going to be an indie film and it's going to be like, he's the right person. So I guess it would have been a totally different, it's hard to imagine, right? I felt like after receiving all this information from people and the love people had of me, like, my God, this person was a great person. I don't know. I kind of feel like I know, but through osmosis, I just thought, I hope that he would be proud of, I hope he would feel it was accurate. Okay. But I'm glad I got a chance to be the person to convey the story. It's quite an honor.
I'm going to bug you with one more question. Okay. This is a 300-page masterpiece, in my opinion.
Well,
honestly,
so
I devoured this thing. If you could choose one thing for people to take away from this book, what would it be? What do you want people to walk away after they've read this book? What do you want them to take with them?
This was a magic piece of filmmaking history. That little lightning in a bottle that happened, to really appreciate that little magic that happened encapsulated in the making of this movie, from the beginning of finding the graphic novel to it premiering until it lasting till today, for people to be curious about how does something like that happen, and all appreciate all of the human creativity and care and love and pain. And people told me, who worked on this movie in one way or another, again, independently, said it was the best and the worst times of their life. To realize that life has its tragedies and its triumphs, and I guess to appreciate the magic that was lightning in that bottle. It strikes people on a very, very deep human level, and that's what art and filmmaking and everything is about, right?
Lightning in a bottle. I think that is the perfect way to describe this movie. I hope y'all enjoyed that interview. There are few things that make me happier to talk about than The Crow, and it was such a pleasure and such an honor to get Bridget Baiss, who, again, is the messenger of so many people who were on that set, who worked on The Crow, who had a love for the source material, the film, everything. I am so beyond grateful that my first time having a guest on this channel was somebody like Bridget Baiss, who has not just spent years being a dedicated journalist and broadcast journalist, but also somebody who is so connected to the source material and genuinely appreciates it and wrote such a phenomenal book. If you didn't catch the title, the 30th anniversary re-release is The Crow, the life, death, and rebirth of a classic film. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on this very special video about 1994's The Crow in the comments below.